Alright, what's up everybody? Scott Brio back again. Today we're going to do some granular synthesis on the S2400 by Isla Instruments. If you're not familiar, granular synthesis is you either have to use a granular synthesizer or you have to use a sampler. Well, essentially what you're doing is you're taking sounds and you're taking, really small bits of those sounds and you're adding, envelopes to them, ADSR envelopes, and you're pitching them and doing some other things to them that essentially turn them into synthesized sounds, but from samples. And so that's what we're going to do here today. I wanted to share it with all of you because I just kind of discovered it on this thing and I was really excited about it. So with any luck, you should be able to add some of these sounds to your songs. So what I'm using today is there's in the file exchange section of the form on their website, there is a, EMU factory ROMs. So somebody has shared a bunch of the MoFat, Planet Fat, Orbit, like all that stuff, the original sounds that came on those rack-mounted dance units from, the 90s. So really super cool, really great sounds. They're very kind of vintage and retro. They make really great additions to your songs because we have all these modern sounds, right? Like we've got Serum and we've got, all this crazy stuff. But sometimes it's good to throw in these little bits of this like vintage sound just for a little bit of like vintage flavor. So anyway, let's go ahead and start. I've got a blank slate here on my unit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with, this is the first, if you want to follow along, this is the first sound in the Synth Mania folder of the EMU Factory ROMs sample pack. And these are all really short sounds. That's kind of, because these older rack mount units had very small amounts of sample time that they could ship in the ROM. Essentially, they had to make them all very short. And then they would stretch them out onto all the different keys and they would add looping and stuff so that when you held them down, you would get these like sustained notes. We're not going to quite do that here today, although you can do that on this thing. What we're going to do is we're going to use those as our grains for granular synthesis. So this is the first sound. It's A sharp on G string in the Synthmania sound pack. So I'm going to go to sample and let's hit go. All right, sample is okay. Nice short little sample. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to dial in the beginning and find, this isn't super crucial because we're going to be, taking a grain from this whole thing, but it's good practice to do anyway, right? So find the end of this one. Cool. Hit 2 to zoom back out. 3 zooms in, 1 zooms out, 2 gives you the full view of the sample. And so this is what we have. Cool. We can hit level and let's just bring that up. This is a good practice, good thing to do. Not that the sample exactly needs it, but what I'm gonna do is I hit level while we're in this waveform editor and I can normalize the sound and I bring everything to minus 0.1 just for safekeeping so that nothing is technically clipping. So now we know our sample is nice and loud. And let's go ahead and hit shift and save. And we're gonna save to project, but we're not gonna name this one. Assign to a track, let's do A1 and save it to file. Cool, and hit back twice to back out. There you go, that is our little sound. Okay, so now first steps. What we're gonna do is go on over to loop slice and hit loop slice. And you can use the faders here to find the start of your sample and the top of the filter to dial in the end. And then the middle one is I believe your loop point. So if you want, you can have it start and then to turn looping on, you hit B and you'll see a little line there, connect. And that kind of helps you realize that looping is on. And so now you can see what that did, right? Like you hold it down and it goes until it hits the end and then goes back to the loop point and just loops around and around and around. And what I've been doing is if you hit shift and the pad that you're working on and go down to gated, let's turn gated on and then back out of that. And that just means that it's not going to keep going if we, let off of the pad. This is good for what we're doing here with the granular synth stuff. Okay, so we don't want it actually that long. So what we're going to do is we're going to dial it back. Cool. So now this is a really small grain of that original sound. It doesn't sound like much right now, but once we get to adding the envelope and doing some other things, and then eventually adding, effects. Well, this doesn't have effects yet, but it will one day, hopefully. Even if it doesn't, you can add effects to it. You could plug it into a guitar pedal or a bunch of guitar pedals, and you can really get wild. So this is just kind of your dry source sound, and then you can do with it whatever you want. So, because that's a little grain, it has this interesting kind of character to it. So I like that. And then let's, now that we've got that, we're gonna go over to envelope. And now that we're in envelope, we can set the envelope for that. And you can see on the screen for the first one, as you are using the fader here, what that's doing is it is setting the release of the sound that we just made. So if we have it all the way up, very start and stop, if we bring it all the way down, we have a nice long release. And this is where we really start to get into the kind of like synthesis side of granular synthesis with a sampler. Cool. Okay, so now that we have that, we are going to head on over to pitch. And now that we're in pitch, we're going to do multi-mode for the pitch, and that spreads this all the way across the 8 pads. And so now we've got, cool, right? And so you can start to see how this starts to become melodic and more than just a short little grain. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just make a quick little melody that I kind of like. Yeah, that works for me. This is really cool. And so now you have like a synth part that you could throw in, over some drums. Get a little bit of call and response there. Sweet. So now let's try this. I believe if we hit B, we can set the filter for all of these and really start to kind of create like a really cool sound. So I'm gonna hit B on all of these all the way across. So now the filter's on for all of these. And we're gonna dial in the filter top, which sets where the filter cutoff is, and then the filter bottom, which sets the resonance. And if we do it different for each pad, we're gonna get some really cool sounding effects. And you can hear how adjusting the resonance on these sounds really kind of changes each note. Nice. That sounds pretty good so far. So let's back out of this. We'll call that one pretty much done. And now, when you want to go back to play your melody on this, you do have to go into pitch and multi-mode. But everything is saved in your multi-mode there, including the filter settings. So now let's do another one. Let's do a kind of like a sub bass. Let's do a sub bass, or just a bass in general. All right, so we're going to hit sample again. And I'm going to take, this is from that same folder. This is basses O drop. Hit record, cool. Sample is okay. And so now let's dial the beginning in. Again, this isn't super important, but you do, because we're taking a grain, you don't want to spend a lot of time fiddling around and trying to find where your grain is. What I found, a nice little tip is, so when you're wanting to dial in the first part, you touch the first fader, and now the zoom in and zoom out focus is all based on that first fader. And now we'll do the end one. And so now this end fader controls the wide movement of the end of your sound here. And then this one does a little bit finer. So you can bring it right to the end there and zoom in. And you can either use this fader here, or I actually like to use this. I use the jog wheel. Hit 2, and now there it is. And this is what I love about the S2400 is once you dial in the start and end point, it kind of auto truncates the sound for you, and it just keeps it focused right there, which is great because now we've got a little bass sound. So cool. We're going to hit Shift and save. We're going to save that to this project. I'm not going to name it. Assign it to track. Let's do A2 and save to file. Hit back twice and there we go. Cool. So same procedure. We are going to go into loop slice, and for this one, we go into loop slice, dial in our loop from with the fader, find in the beginning. And the top of the filter knob, find the end, and of course hit B to turn on looping. There we go. There it is. You got to turn on looping. Let's hit Shift Pad, make that a gated sound. Cool, so this actually started as like a kick sound. So it already has some, low end oomph to it. But now that we're looping it, it's turning it into more of like a synthy, like Mogi type sound. So now we have that. Now we can go into our envelope and let's do the same thing. Let's give it a nice release. I'm gonna move the fader down here and it'll change your sound to give it a release. And this is good because now it's gated, so as long as we're holding it, it's going to loop. And when you let off, it does a nice little release thing. Now let's head over to go to pitch, and we're gonna do multi-mode. Let's turn the filter on this guy and kind of dial in. We could dial in some resonance maybe. So keep in mind, what the resonance is doing is, when you have a regular filter, you're cutting off the sound. It's a low pass filter. When you add the resonance, what it does is it creates a peak. And so when you use the top of the filter, what you're doing is you're scanning that and you're cutting off more or less. But with that peak there, you can also use that peak to accentuate the bass tone, like the bass frequencies of the sound, and squeeze some extra bass out of it. You do have to be careful because you can cut out bass because you're using a low pass filter on a bass sound. But if you do it well, or if you do it correctly, you can get more additional bass out of it. Cool, I like that. All right, now let's set some of our faders here. We're still in pitch multi-mode. And let's make a little melody. We can pitch it around and see what our options are, When it gets really low. I mean, that's like sub-shaking stuff. And with a bass sound, you don't need that many pitches unless you're really going crazy with it. That's probably more likely what you're going to do is, 3 or 4 notes. Cool. So there is our bass sound. Let's do one more. We're not going to sample. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Shift and Pad and go to Assign Sound, and I'm going to find something in one of my sample packs, and we're going to use that instead, just to give a little bit of variety. Cool, let's do that one. All right, loop slice mode. And if we hit A, there we go, loop slice mode A. And now we can dial in and grab the front of that sound. Cool, it's good enough for me. And let's just, we really don't need both of these. So we're just gonna make the first one, the whole thing. Then hit Shift and save to file, assign to track A3, good. Hit enter and I'll back out. Cool, now we're still in loop slice mode. Let's go ahead and turn looping on. And let's dial in the beginning. And use, there we go. Now, it's doing, oh, sometimes it turns off, so you might have to turn the looping back on. So here's what I just did. I dialed in the beginning of the sound, and I want the beginning of the sound to be the sample start that we just dialed in, right? Like I don't want that to change. But by using the top of the filter and the bottom of the filter knob, what I did was I dialed in the loop to start halfway into the vocal phrase there and loop. So what you get is you get the first half being said and then the second half looping, which this isn't really granular synthesis, but this is kind of a creative looping technique that you can do to get some really cool kind of hype building, elements of your music. If you use this as like a vocal drop or something, it really makes people go crazy because it's like this, looping repetitive part. And let's go ahead and hit Shift Pad. We're going to make this one also gated. Back out of that. And just for the hell of it, we're going to give it an envelope. Again, I just use the fader to dial in some release. And as long as we're holding it down, you get the sound, but then when you let go, it kind of trails off, which is great. Because it almost sounds like it has a little bit of like a delay or something. So now it's like, let's make something out of this, right? Let's hit our bass sound, go into pitch and multi-mode. Go over to tempo, let's dial that up to like 125. We're gonna hit copy. We're gonna copy pattern 1 to pattern 1, and we're gonna do it 3 times. And then hit enter, and what that does is that gives us now a 4-bar phrase. Cool, so better than just one single bar. Let's bring up a kick real quick. Nice. Cool, and let's go over to our vocal here. Again, pitch and multi-mode on the vocal. Nice. All right, loving this. Hit Shift and Pad. Let's bring up a kick drum. That'll do. Techno-y. And while we're here, let's go ahead and add just a couple more. Let's see what we can do. Assign sound. Do that one. keep going. Assign sound. All right, now we've got all that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go into level multi-mode for this hi-hat. And we have all of our levels laid out. And let's do All right, so I did that kind of fast, but what I did here was I turned on the looping that we just did, but for this hi-hat, and I used the filter knob here to set the start and end point, so that we get like this kind of ratcheting machine gun type hi-hat. But the thing is it's not perfect. Like, it's not on any sort of time grid. So, you know, when we play it over the rhythm, we get a little bit of like this weird kind of like polyrhythm type thing going on, which I like. So let's try it. So there you go. That is granular synthesis. We took tiny grains of sounds and turned those into a bass line. I used some creative looping for our little vocal sound there, and then we just threw it into like a house beat. This might be actually one that I save and keep working on. I kind of like it. It's kind of cool. It's got real deep and kind of tech housey. So anyway, I hope this has been helpful. If you like what I'm doing here, please give me a like and a subscribe. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you liked about it, what you'd like to see in the future. All of those things really help kind of show that you're enjoying, show me that you enjoy what you're watching, and let YouTube know that what I'm doing is as good here. So anyway, I'm Scott Brio. Thank you again, and I will see you on the next one. Peace out.